I didn't kick the door open. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a punch. I just stood there, with my hand still on the bedroom door, staring at my wife in bed with my childhood best friend. And in that moment, I realized something I wish I'd learned a different way. The people who betray you the deepest are usually the ones you trusted the longest. But what destroyed me even more than what I saw that night was what my wife said when I asked her why. And when I tell you what happened after that, you'll understand why neither of them ever recovered from what came next. My name is Ethan Mercer, and until that night, I thought I had a normal life. Not perfect, just solid, real. I'd been married to my wife Claire for 11 years, and my best friend, Daniel Holloway, Danny, had been in my life since 2nd grade. He wasn't just a friend. He was the guy who knew every version of me. The broke version, the dumb version, the grieving version, the version that stood at the altar and trusted him enough to make him best man at my wedding. That's what made what happened so sick. If you saw Claire and me from the outside, you'd probably say we looked happy. We had the kind of marriage that didn't need to show off. We had routines. Saturday groceries. Coffee too strong in the mornings. Her cardigan on the kitchen chair. My boots by the back door. Small things. Quiet things. The kind of things that make a life feel real. I loved her in the boring, dependable way people don't write songs about anymore. I showed up. I worked. I stayed. And I honestly thought that mattered. And Danny? Danny had a key to my house. He'd eaten at our table more times than I could count. He came to cookouts. Holidays. Sunday football. Claire laughed at his jokes. I never thought twice about it. Why would I? He was family. That's the ugly thing about betrayal. It doesn't start looking dangerous. It starts looking familiar. And if I'm being honest, the signs were there long before I caught them. I just didn't want to be the man who saw them. At first, it was little things. Claire started keeping her phone face down. Then, she started taking it everywhere. Then she started smiling at messages she wouldn't explain. She was tired more often, distracted, physically there, mentally somewhere else. And Danny started showing up at the house at weird times. Only when I wasn't fully around. Only when there was some small excuse. A cabinet hinge. A tool. A favor. One day I came home early, and they were standing in the kitchen too far apart. That's what I remember most. Not too close. Too far apart. The kind of distance two people create when they've just realized they forgot to fake normal fast enough. Claire had a dish towel in her hand she wasn't using. Danny said he was helping with a cabinet hinge. There was no toolbox, no open cabinet, no reason for him to be there. And still, I said nothing. Because deep down, I think I already knew. And saying it out loud would have made it real. After that, everything changed. Or maybe I just started seeing what had already changed. Claire had girls' nights that didn't add up. Errands that took too long, stories with little gaps in them, and Danny suddenly stopped looking me in the eye when he talked. I started noticing patterns I wish I'd never noticed. Same nights, same excuses, same fake casualness. Suspicion doesn't feel dramatic, by the way. It feels exhausting. It's lying awake at 2 a.m., replaying a 3-second pause in somebody's voice. Then came the lie that changed everything. Claire told me she was having dinner with coworkers. She left dressed nicer than usual. Perfume she hadn't worn in years. I don't even know why I did it, but I drove past the restaurant she named. Her car wasn't there. I called Danny. No answer. Called again. Straight to voicemail. When Claire got home, she had takeout containers in her hand like props in a bad play, and that was the moment something in me went cold. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I checked the phone records, and numbers don't lie the way people do. Dozens of calls, late-night texts, hidden gaps in the day, enough to tell me this wasn't one mistake. This was a second life. Then, a work trip came up. One night out of town. Nashville. Claire knew. Danny knew. I even texted that I'd checked into the hotel. But I never made it to Nashville. Because something in my gut told me, if I wanted the truth, I'd find it in my own house. When I pulled into the neighborhood just after midnight, Danny's truck was parked 2 houses down under a tree. Like hiding it made him less guilty. The house was dark, except for the kitchen light. No TV. No footsteps. No sound. Just that kind of silence that already tells you what you're about to find. I walked upstairs slowly. I remember the cold of the doorknob. I remember the smell of the hallway. I remember wishing, just for 1 second, that I was wrong. Then I opened the bedroom door. And there they were. My wife. My best friend. In my bed. Under my blanket. Danny looked at me like a man caught robbing a church. Claire pulled the sheet to her chest like modesty still meant something. I expected rage. I expected shouting. Instead, everything inside me went quiet. Dangerously quiet. I looked at Danny and said, "Get dressed. Get out of my house." And to this day, I've never heard a room go colder than that one did. Danny tried to talk. I shut it down. He got dressed without looking at me and walked past me smelling like my soap. That detail, I'll never forget. Then, it was just me and Claire. 11 years of marriage sitting on the edge of a bed, wrapped in a sheet and bad choices. And I asked the only question that mattered. I said, "Why?" And what she said next honestly hurt worse than catching them. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Because with him I didn't feel like a disappointment." That was it. Not "I'm sorry." Not "I made a terrible mistake." Not even "I love him." Just that. That with him, she got to feel better about herself, and suddenly everything made sense in the ugliest possible way. She hadn't betrayed me because she was confused. She betrayed me because she wanted escape more than she wanted honesty. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because some truths are so ugly your body doesn't know what else to do. She tried to explain. Said I stopped seeing her. Said she felt lonely. Said it wasn't supposed to happen like this. And that was the moment I knew my marriage wasn't damaged. It was dead. Because she wasn't sorry for the betrayal. She was sorry for the exposure. And once I understood that, I stopped being heartbroken. And started getting calm. I didn't hit him. I didn't trash her things. I didn't post screenshots online. I did something neither of them expected. I got strategic. The next morning I called a lawyer, moved money into a separate account, saved phone records, printed everything, told the truth to the people who needed to hear it. My family, her family, and Danny's brother. No drama, no performance, just facts. Because real revenge doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like consequences arriving all at once. Claire thought I was going to beg, scream, or break down. Instead, I gave her silence and paperwork, and that terrified her more than tears ever could. Danny called me over and over. Voicemails, apologies, excuses. I never answered once. And slowly, the fantasy they built in secret started collapsing in daylight. Because affairs feed on privacy, on adrenaline, on the lie that they're special. But once everybody knows, it stops feeling like romance. It starts smelling like rot. Claire moved out within 2 weeks. Not with Danny, by the way. That tells you everything. I heard he started drinking again, started losing work, started unraveling the second he had to live inside the reality he helped create. Claire tried to talk to me more than once, asked if I'd ever forgive her, and I told her something I still stand by. I said, maybe one day. For me. But don't confuse forgiveness with access. You don't get access to me anymore. And here's the part people don't talk about. Even when you do the right thing, Betrayal still follows you home. It's the second coffee cup you almost pour by habit, the joke you almost text, the toothbrush you throw away and somehow still grieve. There were nights I sat on the bathroom floor, holding one of Claire's old hair ties like it was evidence from a crime scene. Not because I wanted her back, because I had loved her honestly. And honest love doesn't leave the body on command. That's what infidelity really destroys. Not just trust. Memory. Months later, the divorce was nearly final. I had the house, she had her regret. Danny had disappeared from my life, and I thought that was the end of it. I really did. I thought the worst thing I would ever learn was that my wife had chosen my best friend. But then, 3 weeks before everything was finalized, I found something I was never supposed to see. Something that told me this affair hadn't started when I thought it did. Not even close. It was hidden in a place so stupid, so careless, that if I hadn't been cleaning out the garage that afternoon, I would have missed it completely. And when I opened it, my hands actually started shaking. Because suddenly, the timeline didn't make sense anymore. The lies were bigger, the betrayal was older, and one memory I had protected for years was no longer safe. So if you think catching them in bed was the worst part of this story, trust me, it wasn't. Because what I found next proved that both of them had been lying to me for a lot longer than I ever imagined. And when I tell you where it really started, you're going to understand why I never spoke to either of them again. To be continued.